Greetings, 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 and welcome to Michelle Speaks. If you hide it, you can't heal it. I am Michelle Portier, the host of the hour, and I am so honored and grateful to present to you our very special guest, Miss Richa Badami. And before I turn it over to our guest of the hour, I wanted to share with you why it's so important that we are addressing this topic, why we are addressing these issues, because the more that we shed light, the more that we end the stigma or minimize the stigma, the more healing can take place. As in my tagline indicates, if you hide it, you can't heal it. We cannot heal from the things that we cannot address. And so I wanted to give you a little background about the history of domestic violence, which is still very prominent. And so, some of the stats on domestic violence, as well as a hotline if you are in crisis. So, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men experience some form of domestic violence, whether it be physical, mental, emotional, financial, or a combination of all. 1 in 7 women and 1 in 25 men are injured in that environment, in that form of domestic violence that they're living in. And so, with those statistics, it's something that we need to continue to talk about and keep on the forefront of people's minds, people's hearts, and within the community. Because how many are hiding? You may know someone, 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men, that is silently suffering because they're afraid to come forth. So, our goal today is not only to be a source of hope, but a resource for those that are in crisis as a way to get out. And so, without further ado, I want to welcome and thank a warm welcome from my heart. Thank you so much, Miss Rika Badini, for agreeing to grace us with your presence and your history and your story of overcoming today. And so, thank you so much for joining us today. And for my listening audience, can you share with us just who is Miss Rika Badami, personally, professionally, and spiritually?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you for having me here today and having me to join with your wonderful audience and share a little bit about what's possible when you stop hiding and allow yourself to be seen, and begins by actually seeing yourself. So let me begin by sharing a little bit about my own background and how I got to where I am right now. So I'm from India originally, and I now live in the US. But I grew up in a actually a quite a close knit family, and we were very close up till a point when things got dysfunctional, and it was the beginning of addiction and abuse in the family, and I was sadly at the receiving end of that, and completely changed my experience of my childhood. At that moment, I was about 9 years old, and when the first time I was sexually abused, it completely from that point on changed the way I saw myself. It made me really scared of being seen. It made me confused. From there on, my mind was very disturbed and distracted. I didn't know what was right, what was wrong, and it really gave me, it affected every aspect of my life:
Mhm.
emotional, relationships, my school, my sports, my attitudes, everything. And so that really began that deflected my journey at that point. But all detours in life lead to a spiritual journey that has to be had. So in my case, that did lead to my awakening many years later. But it came after a lot of hardship and heartache. I went into relationships that did not serve my highest good. I had belief systems that did not serve my highest good. It took me over a decade, maybe 15 years almost, to begin the work of healing. I left
Right.
home. That's not something that you do as an Indian girl at 18. Now it's normal, it's common. But when I was 18, which it might be shocking, but it was many decades ago. I, I left home, and that wasn't something that you did. If you're a girl, you get married, and then you go off to your husband's home. You don't
Right.
go live on your own. And that was back in 1992, and it was a thing that I knew I had to do.
Right.
I've written about that in my book, Coming Home to the Heart,
Mhm.
which is very nice to see that you used that name for this session, actually, Coming Home to the Heart, because really that's what my healing journey was about. And
Mhm.
I left home. I then, on my own, without the emotional or mental tools, physical tools, spiritual tools, financial tools, without any of that, I was out in the world suddenly finding myself with no preparation, and ended up in, again, really unfortunate relationships and unfortunate situations. And the work that I, would have could have potentially done if I had been from a different kind of a family, would have looked very different
Right.
at that time. But it wasn't meant to be. That wasn't my journey. My journey was what it exactly was. And that happened for a little while, until I got involved in, I was doing a lot of theater and acting, and that was a career that I enjoyed, because it kept me it kept me gave me a chance to get away from me, right? So I've been given a role, I have to act, no problem, camera, lights, action. And I got that. I've got that under control. But to be me was hard.
Right. And so I want to touch on a few things that you've shared that I believe people can resonate with. One, I want to say, age is nothing but a number, and it's hard to believe that you said it's been decades since, you encountered that, and now you're living a totally different life, um, a prosperous life, an abundant life. But some of the things that I believe is key to point out, because I'm sure it can resonate with a lot of people, is that not only did you encounter challenges or abuse at a young age. It wasn't just one type of abuse. That type of abuse that you encountered earlier in your age led you to go into relationships that were not healthy. So you encountered additional abuse, and it was a different type of abuse. And some of the common themes that it caused you to encounter as well is emotional um, and arrested development in your emotional growth, your financial growth, your spiritual growth, and your social growth. And so that's a lot of the things that happen when someone encounters trauma or abuse of any any kind. And
Yeah.
so, but it's all a part of the journey. And your coming home to the heart for you has led you on the path that you are on now to help others. So I just kind of wanted to bring that out before I go into, more in depth into how what you encountered and how you came out and how you've used and you're using that now as a positive force in the community. And so I want to ask you, how have your experiences impacted how you show up, not only as a woman, but as a mother and as a wife and as a friend, and to the world in general?
The thing that my experiences have given me a lot of is perspective and compassion for
Mhm.
other people's experiences. I think that was one of the first things that, when I started doing this work, and the reason I started doing this work is because, when I say this work, the work of personal transformation, inner work, healing the self, that
Mhm.
work. And because pretty much when I was 22, 23, I had my hairpin bend at a transformation event, where, through a meditation, I, for the first time, found access to all the anger, the pain, the shame, the blame, the suppressed emotional state that was so toxic inside of me, that,
Mhm.
for since I was 9 years old, all that confusion, all that chaos inside of me, I had that one moment where, like, the lid came off,
Mhm.
and I was able to release and express. I had been seen, I had been heard, I had been held. I had an empathic witness for my catharsis, and that was the beginning of my healing, I feel. And
Mhm.
the reason that I today use those very tools that helped me have my transformation is that's the reason, because I know everyone needs a witness. We need to be held, we need to be seen, especially when we're in trauma, we've been in trauma or have been abused. We feel very alone, we feel very isolated, and to know that there's just one person who cares that you feel better makes all the difference. So it's been a huge, it's done everything for me in my life, for my relationships, my friendships, my parenting, my being a professional or personal wife, mother, sister, whatever. It has
Mhm.
given me this understanding that people aren't always expressing what they are feeling. It's
Right,
very much in line with your theme that we hide. We are as sick as our secrets.
right,
Our secrets keep us sick. And I was asked to keep my secret by my mom because she didn't think that anybody, including my brothers, should hear about my abuse by my dad, because that was going to shatter the image of our family.
right,
And I kept the secret. I swore, and I did not speak about it till the day I left when I
right,
was 18. And that was the first step. And then I had to continue to do the work, and I just didn't know how. There was no therapy, there was no mentoring, there were no coaches, there was none of that.
right,
You weren't supposed to talk about it,
right.
period. And so I had to find my own way.
Right. And so, and that's so powerful how you've been able to kind of pave your own path, to your pathway to healing, coming home to, finding the heart that you were originally given and created. And so, what I wanted to share, there's a myth out there, and we share similar stories, not the same, but they parallel. And some of the myths is that, I want to point out that this kind of abuse, these kind of traumas, know no socioeconomic status. They know no cultural bounds. We are more similar than we are different.
Yeah.
Um, because when we talked earlier offline, I know I mentioned, in the African American family, we don't talk about things. In the African American family, we don't do this. But you were born and raised in India, and you're now here in California, and you encountered the same kind of trauma, and the same traditions were held in your family. We don't talk about this. We're going to pretend it didn't happen. We're going to sweep it under the rug. And so I just wanted to point out that, we are more alike than we are different. And we don't have to feel alone. We don't have to not use our voice. We don't have to suppress who we were originally created to be. And so I want to thank you again for being so brave and so courageous to, find your own pathway to healing. Um, and so, anyhow, with that being said, I wanted to ask you as well on a daily basis, because I know this is not an easy journey and this is not an easy walk, because how many people want to address things that are hard, that are considered to be taboo, things that are considered to be, we keep this within the family, in a society that is so focused on and geared towards pleasure and happy and good things, and
Yeah.
avoid the bad and avoid addressing the negative, and let's just focus on the positive. What obstacles have you encountered, doing your part to minimize the effects of the challenges, that you have been privy to, and that you are now a part of a continuum of healing for, or a conduit of healing for? How do you deal with the challenges that you encounter on a daily basis? Um,
Yeah, my, challenges come up all the time. One of the biggest challenges was becoming a mom
right,
and becoming a mother, having having children, because I honestly thought that now that I said, okay, we are having babies, that's fine. And
right,
I thought God and I had a deal that I'll only get sons and I'll only get boys, so I won't have to deal with any issues that I dealt with.
right,
And then my daughter was born. I literally brought blue, everything blue to the hospital. I was so sure, and I
mhm,
was wrong. And then within 2 years, I had a second child. Again, it was a girl.
mhm,
And finally, I had my third child, and it was a girl again. And
right,
so not only did I have three amazing, beautiful, perfect daughters, I realized that God had, it wasn't a joke, but God had a plan for me. And
Right.
the plan that I saw finally was that this is my work. It is to face my own childhood and be able to have the love and compassion and healing for
Yeah.
myself so that I can truly heal. So my daughters were really my angels or my messengers from God, saying that you're loved and you're absolutely perfect the way you are. You were never damaged, which is that was one of my beliefs, that I'm damaged and I'm broken. And I was a belief that wasn't true. And
Mhm.
so had to release that, had to forgive myself for all the blame I had put on myself for being abused. And that's something very typical of trauma victims. They blame themselves. And I've done that. And I don't do that anymore. In fact, I stopped doing that a long time ago.
Right.
But there are obstacles that come up on a daily basis. There could be some triggers, there could be some memories. But the thing about healing and transforming yourself is that the memory doesn't have to go away. It's the
Mhm.
emotional charge, it's the story that I built around it, it's the story that we build around those memories.
Mhm.
That's the piece that we get to transform,
Right.
because you can't surgically remove the
Right.
memory from your brain, but you can have a real different relationship with your past.
Mhm. Well, our body does hold trauma, and I believe, it holds that thing until we, either address it or it continues to kind of destroy us or
Yeah.
sabotage, our relationships. What I wanted to ask you is, what did it look like, and what, if you can share, what were some of the things that you encountered while you were in the relationships that turned toxic, and what was the final pivotal point thing that happened that caused you to know that you needed to start working on yourself and your healing? And did you truly do it alone? Because you did it alone, but you had help. And
Right.
so, the resources that you reached out to. So if you can kind of chop that down
Oh,
and take.
absolutely. So, in my teen years, because of the complexity of the psychological and emotional and physical abuse, I was very lonely and depressed as a teenager. I started to drop out of everything. I was really good at, sports and dance and activities and studies. And suddenly I'm like not doing well in anything. I drop out of everything and I'm getting depressed. And over time, I had my spurts of like positive things that happened. Um, for example, I got into the college I wanted to get into. I wanted to be a psychologist, so, and I applied for psychology, and I got into the number one college in India for psychology, and I go there, and I the faculty offered free counseling. So I said, finally, I can now work on myself. And I went to a session, and my first session, the second, and the third with three different counselors, and every single one of those counselors turned around and said to me that seems like you have a family problem. We can't do anything about it. So
Wow.
every single time I took my issue to this counseling department, and it really shattered my every dream of my career, because I thought here I had put all my hopes and dreams into this line of work, thinking I could help myself and help others. But
Yeah.
the doors have been slammed in my face. And so that pushed me in further depression. And
Mhm.
that's when I finally left and moved far, far away from my hometown up north. And I started over. I started by myself. I started over. And the final straw that broke my back was when my uncle died. And that was my dad's older brother, had a heart attack and died at 55. And in my heart, I had adopted him as my father figure.
Right.
And I had held him, he didn't know this, but I had held him in my heart as the one I went to mentally. He
Wow.
lived in Spain, I lived in India. We were very far apart, but he called every Sunday. I was very close to him.
Mhm.
He loved me, still does. But when he died, it broke me, and I really felt completely lost. And
Mhm.
that was the time that I decided I had to go out on my own. That's the only thing I knew I could do. I still didn't know who who to see, what help to get. I didn't really get any help as such as yet, but I was dove into my work, which was at the time theater and acting, and I just went deep into that career. And during that time, I encountered relationships in which I went through, manipulation, abuse. I had a pregnancy. I had to, have an abortion. I was a teenager at the time. I didn't know anything about anything. My mother had never, I till now, we've never had a conversation
Right.
about
Right.
sex. And so I didn't know anything, and I was out in the world, and I was truly traumatized by one thing after the other, after the other, after the other. And I was a wreck. And
Right.
so, what's the best thing to do when you have everything out of control? Well, get married. So I got married at 22.
So
And
did you
it was
see that as a way of escape or finding security or safety or love? And one of the things that I think resonates with what you shared is that the one thing that you had to do because you knew you couldn't find help there was you had to change your environment. So
yeah.
is that fair to say that's what you did?
Yeah, it gave me a little bit of that respite where I could be alone, be by myself, and just kind of get away from everything. But then that in itself set me up for other problems and other, you can't really, like you said, you can't do things alone.
Right.
We all need people, and the people show up in our lives when we're ready. And those were all lessons that I had to go through. They were very painful lessons. It's not something I've ever taken lightly. It's been a huge burden on my had been a huge burden on my soul and my spirit for all those days of darkness and loneliness. I mean, honestly, I've written about this in my book. I had named my toaster and my tape recorder, and I would come home and talk to them. I would literally talk to my toaster and tape recorder because I was so lonely. I had
Just
no friends. I knew no one. I would sing to myself. I would cry myself to sleep. I would rehearse my lines because I was in theater.
Mhm.
And I would wake up, make my breakfast, make my lunch, make my bed. It was like a robot. And
Mhm.
talk to my toaster. I was so depressed, and nobody knew that.
Mhm.
Nobody knew.
Because
Nobody knew.
you had that mask, like everything was okay, and that you were strong. And you had
Everything was
everything.
okay. I was a professional actress, so I
Mhm.
was doing that everywhere. I was doing that in my life. My grandparents lived in the same town up north, and they didn't know. I would visit them, and I would be a granddaughter. I would go, come back, and then I'd be back into my own. Only I knew what I was going through,
Right.
really.
Right.
No one else.
And
And
so
so yeah.
and
So
I
and after that, I went again, moved from one thing to the next, and it was just not happening for me. It was just there was no peace, there was no inner peace, there was no joy
so
until
basically
I went into
without
that
realizing it.
transformational event.
Yeah.
And that's where my life changed.
Yeah. So basically, you were running and not realizing that you were running. You were just trying to find something
Yeah.
that gave you purpose and meaning in life and love.
For the moment. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, what I wanted to ask is, what was one of your darkest moments? And from that moment, that darkest moment, how did you find your way back to creating this life that you've created now? Because one of the things that I find interesting is that I believe a lot of the artists we have in the entertainment industry and in acting and singing and all of that, many of them have challenges and things that they've encountered, and they channel that through their music, through their acting. And all of them meet a proverbial, where the rubber meets the road moment where they have to do some real inner work. And so, what was one of your darkest moments, and how did you?
I think one of my darkest moments of the time that actually got me on the path that I'm
Mhm.
on was in 1995. I had just gotten married in January, and literally by June, I found out that I was married to, and he was not he was unfaithful, and had been unfaithful throughout the relationship. I had just turned a blind eye to it, and I never expected my life would go that way. I was just in this very focused on it's all going to be a fairy tale from now on. I didn't know that then, but I thought my movie was now going to be a Bollywood movie, and it
Right.
wasn't going to be that. And so I think that when that happened, I was then pushed into discovering healing modalities, and that's when in 1995 I did my first training in energy healing, which is a modality called Reiki, and that was my first foray into that. And I want to mention something on how God works in such mysterious and miraculous ways. That months before I found Reiki, my father found Reiki. And he went into these courses and trainings and he told me about Reiki. And I found it really bizarre that I'm reading about this. Why is he telling me about it? Because I wasn't really talking to him anymore, and I really got angry about it because I said, who are you to tell me what I should be doing for my healing? You're the
Right.
one who caused all this.
Right.
However, I knew spirit was guiding me, and at the time I didn't know spirit was guiding me, but I just knew something was guiding me and that he made sense. My dad made sense, even though
Mm.
I hated the fact that it was coming out of his mouth to me. And I went ahead and I did the first Reiki course, and I went out in such resistance. I went there to like disprove that it worked. I went there to be a rebel. And 6 months or so later, I started to feel a lot of changes, actually, much sooner, like 2 to 3 months later, I started to feel my allergies were gone, my skin was better, I was sleeping better, toxic relationships were slowly, leaving my life. They were just not showing up anymore. My husband at the time, his truths came straight, like literally were presented to me. Like my friends literally presented them to me. I didn't have to go finding the proof or finding anything. It was all brought to me.
Mhm.
And just started to detoxify my life. Things just started to get cleaned and cleared up. And I'm like, something has happened. What have I done? What did I change? And then I realized the only thing I changed was I did that class. So I went back, I took the class again. And this time I went and did it seriously and I really, really took it on. And that's what literally changed my life. I really took it on 100%, 150%, went in and I started doing my work, which was it all starts with self healing,
Of course.
self transformation. So I started doing my own self transformation work, and that's where my journey began. And after that, it was course after course, training after training. I had my acting career on the side, but this started to become more of my focus and my peace, my joy. It's what I needed more, and so that's what I did.
So the relationship with your father began to change at that point. So was that when the healing started for you and your father? The forget
Yeah, the
and
healing did start. And
yeah.
it was through the work that I continue to do with personal transformation that one time I went to an event, a transformational 3-day event, and he
Mhm.
was also at that event as actually an assistant to the seminar leader,
Mm.
and he was on the team. And for so long, I even forgot that he was there because I was so deep into doing my work. And I remember going through that experience of having my cathartic release. And I was like, all the anger, all the expletives, and all the words were flowing out. And he was right there. I didn't even realize he was right there because I was so deep into my own release. And that after that was when I actually what actually created the space. Doing that release work is what created the space for an opening to start to have a dialogue with him for healing to happen in our relationship. And
Mhm.
so I remember this time very clearly, that I've shared again in my book, is about a time when he and I actually went on a trip for 2 days to an ashram in the south of India. And this time we actually had sat down face to face in an orchid garden, which was in a very spiritual place, and actually did this exercise where we we talk to each other very clearly, without any filters, without any sort of blame, but just how we were feeling and how we had felt. And we did this exercise back and forth, back and forth. And that day was when I feel like a majority of the emotional baggage of the 10, the 20 years by that point, almost little less than actually 20 years at that
Mhm.
point, was able to actually clear and complete, and finally come back to this place to see that, okay, we've been given gifted in some way to each other's lives in this way, where you have you and I have had this exchange in this lifetime, but that doesn't define who we are or what we were meant to be.
Mhm.
So that was a pivotal moment in our relationship and our healing that really cleared the way for me to have him back in my life again,
Right.
and then start over.
Right. And so one of the things that I want to point out is, again, you know, if you hide it, you can't heal it. And so part of your healing journey, and I'm sure his as well, is that you guys had to have that interaction where you had that exchange, so that you can both begin your own individual journeys to healing, but also so that you could heal together the relationship, that you guys had, within the familiar unit. Now, how is your relationship with your mom? And or do you have
With
one?
my mom, I always believed that my mom and I were best friends growing up, and we were. So when she asked me not to tell anyone, I totally believed that it was in my best interest. I mean, I had no doubt, no question about it. And it was only, I think, more recently when I became a mom and I had my kids and I was going through new layers of healing and transformation that I realized that, hold on, wait up a second here. She did have some power. She could have done more. There's no way that had to be the way it had been. And I think she just didn't realize that she had power, and she didn't know her power at the time.
Mhm.
But our relationship really took a turn when that blind spot really kind of disappeared for me, and I realized that no, this is like off balance here. So I confronted her about that and said, why didn't you do something? You could have
Wow.
sent me to the grandmother's house. You could have sent me off to boarding school. I don't know. I mean, there were lots of options. And she said, well, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything to you. I'm not the one who did something to you. I'm like, no,
Wow.
you didn't do anything. That's the problem. Like, you could
Basically,
have done
he
something.
didn't protect you.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's not just the protection, the first part of it, but it was
Right.
after knowing what it was to then take action and actually be, lead, like with power, and
Right.
take charge. As a parent, you need your parents to take charge. As a
So.
child, you need your parents to take charge. And, you know, that didn't happen. And that sort of set me up for what almost felt worse, you know, after not getting the validation and protection, that almost felt worse
Mhm.
than the previous part of the abuse itself.
Mhm.
So it's that piece of the empathic witness when you don't have someone who can have that empathy for you, it kind of really isolates you and you feel really abandoned and that you're alone. And so I developed this strong suit that whatever I got to do it on my own. No, no one's coming. No one's coming. My dad's
Exactly.
not coming. My mother's not coming. I got no one. I got to do
Mhm.
it on my own. And
Mhm.
so that started to form as a child, and it's led me all the way up until adulthood, where I didn't find it easy to ask for help. It's very hard for me to say I need help. I mean, I do it now
I
because
was
God
about to
knows
say that.
if I don't
Right.
do it now.
Right.
But it was very hard. Like, I didn't know what the problem was, and I would run myself into the ground doing every single thing myself. And that's
Mhm.
because that was my attachment style. My
Mhm.
attachment style was to avoid,
And
because if
that
I
that
if I
goes.
connect, then I'll be hurt.
Yeah. And that goes against the very way we've been created. You know, we weren't created to be isolated and alone and disconnected. We were created to be connected. You know, and I say this a lot. The root word for community is commune. So we were created to commune with one another. So that must have been, there are no words to describe what that must have been like going through life, going against the very way that we were created to be. And
But
so,
that's why we get sick. That's why we get sick because we're going against nature. We're going against God's will for us and His dream, His desire for us.
uh,
We're not connecting, and if we are connecting, it's in that sort of with a mask.
mhm,
The masks are connecting. Your mask and my mask are connecting, but our hearts are not.
right. That's powerful. That's powerful. Say that part again. I just,
I said, your our masks are connecting,
our hearts
but
are not.
our hearts are not.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that. So, what would you say has been or is been the secret to your success, and what is one of your most defining moments?
Well, I would say that I've been given this gift of being a student.
Hmm.
And no matter how many courses I've done, or trainings, or books and teachers I have had in my life, I will always continue to be a student. My biggest, I think, has that's been one of my biggest, I think, gifts. I just naturally love learning, and the more I learn, the more I enjoy sharing it, and the more I love being with people and helping others on the path that that need that need support or need any help. I'm here to help them. I'm here to help others. And so my most defining moment, I think, would be about when I came into my own, I should say, in this work. Was I had worked with teachers and masters for years and years, and I finally came out on my own, leading my first retreat
Hmm.
with pretty much a divine plan. And it was in 3 words. It was allow the message. That's it.
Mm.
It was ATM, God's ATM, limitless cash, limitless resource. God's ATM to me was allow the message and the access to everything. I didn't know it at the time. All I kept hearing in my head and heart was allow the message, allow the message. So I completely trusted, and I launched my first retreat. This is over 10 years ago, and yeah,
Right.
12 years ago.
Hmm.
And people came, and it was absolutely miraculous. And I didn't even feel like I was there. I was just channeling. The entire weekend was channeled. And as I was asked, I did. And as I was led, I guided the meditations. As I was asked, I held space, and deep healing happened, deep transformation happened, lives were changed forever. And I'm just grateful that I was able to find my space as an instrument of God's work and just allow myself to be an open channel and allow the message.
I absolutely love that acronym. God's ATM, allow the
Yeah.
message. That was very powerful.
Yeah.
Um, Rico, what I want to ask you is what insights can you share with anyone that may be listening now and that has experienced similar things that you've experienced throughout your life, or similar trauma, on how to show up after those experiences and how to continue to show up?
I think this absolutely first thing is to show up.
But what would that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if you're here right now, you're showing up. If you're listening to this, watching this, you're showing up. And if you've shown up, first of all, take a moment to thank yourself. Say, I thank myself for showing up. I
Hmm.
thank myself for being me. I thank myself for allowing myself to hear this message, because when you go through difficulty, you don't ever thank yourself. You don't ever have gratitude for just you, because you are enough. You are enough. You are already beautiful, whole, and complete. Yes, things did happen, and we have a range of things that have happened to all our lives in different aspects. The first thing is to show up, answer the call that has been provided to you, see the signs, take the message, listen, take a take that leap of faith. If I had in my brain, in my mind, in my head up here intellectually, I had
Mhm.
no reason to believe that listening to my dad was going to lead to anything good. I had no reason to believe it up in my head, but my
Mhm.
heart knew. In my heart, I knew there was something that I needed to follow. So my advice would be to drop in within yourself, drop in to listen to the truth that you are, because our experiences kind of create the fog or the layers that block us from really knowing our own truth. Some
Right.
of the ways that I've done that in my own life, and I am happy to share a few ways that might help, is I do a lot of, like, every day I do my own practices, which are yoga, prayer, meditation, breathing, and breath work and writing.
Mhm.
I Every single day I find a way to be in nature, to breathe outdoors, to go in my vegetable garden,
Right.
in whatever way I can, use music, but to go within.
Mhm.
So some of the ways that you can show up is by honoring yourself and thanking the fact that you are here. You are here in itself is a testimony that God wants you to be here. And
Right.
God just doesn't want you to survive or be a victim. He wants you to thrive. He wants you to use his ATM. He wants you to, keep coming back and keep stay open to the possibility, because if I can do it, anybody can do it. There is
Mhm.
nothing you cannot do. There is no peace that you cannot have, because the peace is already in you. There is no love that you have to seek, because it is already in you. All there is to do is to remove the barriers to that peace, to remove the barriers to love. And the way we do that is by removing those layers. And I have a whole process that I now take my clients through or students through in my programs, where
Mhm.
you layer by layer free yourself and release yourself of everything that's happened to you in the past, and your relationships, your belief systems, your mental mindset, and you reprogram yourself to truly be who you are meant to be. And then you come to find out you already were that. And the
Mhm.
identity that you had built up was not even not even what was
It was
real.
false. It was
Yeah.
false.
False
Right.
identity, your
Right.
fake ID.
Based on fear, right? Which is false
Yeah,
evidence of appearing
based
real.
on fear, pain, blame, shame. We
Mhm.
have, if God was to ask you what's your ID, we would say, oh, here's my driver's license, social security. We have these IDs that we think we have, but our true identity, I call it your inner divine. Your ID is your inner divine.
Mhm.
What is that inner divine? It doesn't have a social security number, it doesn't have a credit score, it doesn't have this model of car and that size of house. It's
Mhm.
your inner self, your spirit self. And that's the one. We give the reins to that, and then we are really living in alignment and awakeness, and we can act in that knowing. And that's really, better way to lead your life, is to lead from a place of truth and authenticity,
Love
rather
it.
than fear and shame.
Thank you so much. So I'm feeling so full and so empowered just listening to you share, your journey. And so your evolution, you've evolved from this little girl that was violated in the most vile way. And it was a continued compilation of violation upon violation and trauma upon trauma. And you've taken all of that and turned it into this beautiful life where you help to help others transform. And so you're a transformational coach, you're an author, you're a mother, you're a wife, you are a leader. Can you share with us how all of that evolved into your book, Coming Home to the Heart, and tell us more about what Coming Home to the Heart is all about?
Sure. Well, my the book had been something I had promised myself. I thought I would never ever actually do it because it's like, oh, I'm done with all that. It's in the past. I don't need to go back in there. Who needs to dig up all that? and
Mhm.
and then over and over again, after retreat, class after class, my students would say, so when are you writing your book? When do we get to like know your whole story? And I was like, what that's crazy. We don't need to go there. Then I realized that I did, because I
Mhm.
was trying to actually not fully embrace and accept maybe some parts of my journey. So I went ahead, and it took me about 5 years to actually, from start to finish, to get it out. And I did that back in 2016, and it has in it parts. It has my own journey up until that point, and how I where I began, how things changed, and how I found healing, and my work with my teachers and mentors, and all the amazing training that I received from them. And
Mhm.
then the second half of the book is really about helping others. So I actually teach a lot of my processes in the book, and things that you can do for yourself. So, whether it's silence or meditation or breath work or movement, I talk about the importance of those practices, because a lot of my work is based in personal transformation, meditation, and spiritual growth. And so I openly share about my practices. If you can't come to one of the events, in any case, right now we're in different times,
Right?
with the way we are in our world right now,
And New
but
York.
hopefully that will shift one day and we'll be able to be back in person again. But in the meantime, I'm doing everything online, over Zoom, and virtual, and over the phones, and
Right.
helping people in whichever way I can. So the book has it has self introspection questions at the end of the chapters. So while I'm telling my story, I'm also asking questions for you to read and ask yourself.
Mhm.
What are some of the ways you experienced anger? What are some of the things you want to forgive? Forgiveness is a very big part of my work,
Okay.
because it's where you really clear the clutter, so that
Mhm.
you can start to create. You can't create with clutter
Well,
in there. You've got to clear the clutter to consciously create the life you truly want and desire. And so it's really a lot about healing the past, healing the self,
mhm.
finding a new finding a connection to yourself that's always been there. And it may
Right.
feel like it's new, but it's really not new. It's you. It's
Mhm.
always.
So, if you guys have not um, known about this book, Coming Home to the Heart, now you know about it. So, I encourage you um, to take a look at it, read it, implement it, so that you can begin your journey to coming home to the heart, and you can help others do as well. What I wanted you to share, Rika, with our listening audience is, what is a one takeaway and what is one call to action for those that are tuning in now and they are straddling the fence about whether or not they want to begin the journey to healing, or they
Yeah.
want to stay stuck out of
Mm.
fear? So, what is a call to action? What is a takeaway?
Well, my question would be, what are you getting out of it? Because we do everything to get something. We get something from everything. Even there is a payoff, even in being stuck. And usually,
Mm.
the payoff is, I get to be right. I get to be right by not forgiving you. I get to
Mhm.
be right, and I get to hold on to my anger. And if that is a place you want to be, ask yourself how that looks in your life right now.
Mhm.
So my action, the action plan that I would give you, or something that you could look at, is, what is the vision you have for your life? What's the vision that you want for your life? Put that down, write it out, and then look around you. in your present life and write that down and look at the two and do they match? More often than not, if we haven't done the inner work, they do not match.
Mhm.
More often, if you're not at least on a journey of transformation and healing and growth, those do not match because there's something called a resonance and dissonance. If you're
Mhm.
not feeling the resonance, then you're not going in the flow of your growth. You're disconnected from your true dreams and desires.
Mhm.
So my wish and my request would be to take stock, come into the truth of what is, and it's okay to not be okay. It's absolutely okay to not be okay because that is the starting point.
Mhm.
That's the starting point. Think of yourself as this is you and this is a wall right here.
Mhm.
Okay. And this is all your experiences that you've had in your life.
Mhm.
This is not going to change. But what can change is that you can grow. You can grow and you can get taller than this wall. When you get taller than this wall, now you can suddenly see what's over the wall.
Mhm.
We're not going to knock the wall. We can't change what happened in the past, but you can grow. And that's what coaching does. That's what doing the inner work does. It helps you grow to a place that's bigger than your circumstances. It's bigger than your past. It's much, much, your view and your vision, your perspective widens, it increases. It helps you have the things that you truly want to have and the things that you desire for yourself in your life because you are the common denominator in your life.
Well.
If you don't change, nothing in your life changes. Your
Mhm.
money, your health, your career, your relationships, you can keep going. Everything in your life is impacted by your state. If you have what they call stinking thinking, then everything in your life is affected by that.
What do you think is and this is the final question, what do you think is the biggest challenge with people not wanting to face themselves because we are the common denominator and it does begin and end within. So what do you think that thing is that prevents people or people are so fearful of facing within themselves?
I think it's different for everybody, but personally, I think that for me, it was fear. It was fear of going there,
Mhm.
fear of being alone on the journey and not knowing what I would do if I did go there. And so I think my advice is to work with someone that you can trust and that you feel safe with in going there. Either, whether it's coaching or whether it's groups or support, any way that you think you can feel safe. I think finding safety is number one because that's our brains, our primal brains. We need first and foremost safety. So if we
Mhm.
don't have safety, there's no way I'm going to trust you with my feelings.
Right.
I'm not going to go to my deepest, darkest places if I don't have trust in my surroundings. So the number one thing is finding a safe and trusting relationship that either you have to hire somebody to do that or you have someone you can do that with, but it's absolutely worth it because when you heal yourself, the whole game changes. It's now a totally different paradigm that you're living in. It's a quantum shift in your life because unless you do that for you, no one's going to do it for you.
Mhm.
Nobody is going to care as much as you can care for yourself. Nobody, even however much they may love you. Your own parents, your spouse, your partner, your children, no matter how much they love you, no one can care for you the way you can care for you. So if you're waiting for someone else to give you proof that you're worth it, then you're going to be waiting for
Mhm.
the longest time. And if you're okay with that, then nothing one can do. But I hope you take charge of your life and you realize that you're worth it, you're enough, and you need you first and foremost. Because God's got you. You've got to get you now.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. So there you have it. You have the takeaways, you have the call to action, you have the plethora of resources and information and hope and everything that you can have at your disposal. All you have to do is make the decision that you are worthy enough to heal from within, and that you are worthy enough and that you're brave enough to confront the thing within that has come against who you were originally created to be. I want to thank you, Rika, for agreeing to come on and share your experience and share your journey and how you can help others to come back to their heart. I want you to tell our listening audience how they can connect with you, um, and how they can reach out to you. I know that I have your website that is going across the bottom of the screen, but if there are other ways to connect with you, and then I will share a closing thought, and I look forward to us doing this again.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like Michelle pointed out, my website is richabadami.com. Right now, I'm actually getting ready to launch a summit. So, the summit is about freedom from trauma, and Michelle's a guest of mine on that show, and I'm super excited. It's going to be an amazing series with over 45 speakers bringing different subjects of their life experiences and trauma and modalities that can help heal trauma and consciously create the life you desire. So just go to summit.richabadami.com for that. Or actually, Michelle has her own platform, and Michelle can share her link as well, where you can sign up to be in the summit. And Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook and all of those places as well. You can find me, and on my website, you can sign up for newsletter and my meditations, and join the community if you want to be on a journey of personal transformation and spiritual growth.
Thank you, thank you, thank you again. I am so honored and grateful that you graced the platform of Michelle Speaks. If you hide it, you can't heal it. For my listening audience, a few takeaways, um, and things that stood out to me, and that I hope that it really resonates and it really sinks in. On the journey to healing, because it is a journey, it's not a destination, someplace that you arrive at, because there's levels and layers of healing on this thing called life. So, number one, see the signs, as Rika said, answer the call and show up. And one of the things that stood out to me was stay open to the possibilities. That really resonated with me. Stay open to the possibilities as you begin or continue your journey to healing. And so, again, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for those that tuned in. Make sure that you share this. Make sure that you reach out to Rika and let her know if this has impacted you, how it's impacted you. And so, until the next time we meet, this is Michelle of Michelle Speaks. If you hide it, you can't heal it. We look forward to you us joining us again on our next episode. Thank you all so much. Take care, be well, and God bless.
Thank you.